In this video, you're going to see your first example of how a story can be broken down into 5 different elements that we call plot elements. And just to review kind of what we talked about in the last video, here's what we call the 5 different elements. The beginning, we call it the exposition or introduction. I don't know why anyone would use the term exposition when introduction works just fine, but if someone's trying to trick you, they might say exposition, and you can know that that means introduction. As we go on throughout the story, the biggest part of the story, what most of the story is what we call rising action. And what that has is a series of little conflicts. When you were trying to determine like the main type of conflict in a book or movie or TV show you'd watched, you probably had to sit there and think like, well shoot, like this thing has a lot of different types of conflict. What's the main one? Well, all those other little conflicts that aren't the main one, those little conflicts are what we call the rising action. It's kind of the stuff that keeps us interested in the story along the way, but we're always building up to the main conflict. So the cool thing with the climax of the story, this is where the main conflict ends. The main conflict gets decided right here. I'm actually going to type it in right now just because it's so important. If you can understand that the climax is where the main conflict ends, you're going to have such an easier time figuring this concept out. So just remember the climax, where the main conflict ends. So if you got where the conflict ends, and you got that in your head, okay, that's the climax of the story, the following action is going to be real fast, because after this, no one really cares about what's going on in the story anymore. We got to answer to our main conflict. Character versus character. Did the good guy win or the bad guy win? Okay, the good guy won. Great. No one cares. Let's wrap it up. Following action is like where they wrap it up real quick. And a resolution is the very, very end of the story. Usually like the last line, or maybe the last line or two of a story. Or in a movie, like the last scene of a movie. Well, sometimes the following action and the resolution kind of get blended together, especially in really short stories like we're about to see. So we're going to learn about main types of conflict through the lens of Goldilocks. And as we go through, we're going to think about Goldilocks a little bit. And I hope that you walk away from the story. I mean, I don't usually try to get you to understand like my interpretation of a story. I think kind of the beauty in studying literature is that we can all have an interpretation or a reading of the story, kind of a way we think about it in our heads and all be equally correct. And I'm not saying that's not true for Goldilocks, but here's what I am saying. Goldilocks is a raging creep. There, I said it. It's a story we read to little kids. My daughter reads it. Disturbs me to my core that I read this story to my kid. Goldilocks is a total sociopath. Like, she has no feelings or emotions for anyone. I don't know if she has a soul. Like, Goldilocks is a soulless, like, just wanderer of the void. I don't know. She's horrible. And here's why. In the introduction of the story, or the exposition, here's what we learn. We get the introduction to the characters, the setting, and any other necessary background information that readers are going to need to understand the story. So as you're reading that story or watching that movie, and they're giving you the background info to kind of understand what's going on, that's the introduction. Goldilocks, that's Goldilocks, and those are her vapid eyes. Here's the introduction. Once upon a time, there was a little girl named Goldilocks. Remember, this is like a terrifically creepy story, but it was written for children, so for kids it's going to be short. Not that complex. That's all you need to know. There's a girl. She's named Goldilocks. Rising action. This is where the main problem in the story gets introduced. Now there's going to be other little problems along the way, but we also hear about the main problem in the story, in the rising action. Typically it's the longest part of the story, the rising action, because we're building up to the climax. Here it is in Goldilocks and the Three Bears. So she went for a walk in the forest. Pretty soon she came upon a house. She knocked, and when no one answered, she walked right in. Okay, so we're going to pause here for a second and think about that line. Now, let's start. Goldilocks is this little kid, right? Little kid. She's walking alone in the woods. A little kid walks alone in the woods. It's crazy. Like, that doesn't happen. I'd tell my daughter, like, hey, go for a walk in the woods by yourself. And then, okay, so let's level it up in weirdness. Pretty soon, she came upon a house, like as if it was inevitable. As if all of us, when we go walk in the woods, are just bound to come along a house. That'd be weird, right? You're walking in the middle of the woods. Like, that's a cabin in the woods. It's literally a cabin in the woods. Stay away from that house. It's a cabin in the woods. But she goes up to it. So she goes up to this house, and she knocks on the door. Okay. Which, why? Why, like, if you're walking, you're alone in the middle of the woods and you see a cabin in the woods, don't go knock on the door. It's full of chainsaw murderers. That's a bad idea. But when no one answered, because it's probably haunted or something, she walked right in. Okay, best case scenario here, Goldilocks is stupid. Like, she's never seen a horror movie or has no experience of like any concepts related to houses in the middle of the woods. You don't walk in. Worst case scenario is Goldilocks assumes it's a house full of regular people, and then she doesn't care, she just walks in. Who does that? You don't go to some stranger's house and just like knock on the door like, all right, no one's home. Time for me to go in. That doesn't happen. You're going to steal something. Like, someone does that, they're up to no good. Okay, so anyways, moving on. At the table in the kitchen, there were 3 bowls of porridge. Okay. Goldilocks was hungry. She tasted the porridge from the first bowl. That's disgusting. Someone else's food is sitting on the table, and Goldilocks walks up to it. And the text tells us she's hungry. Okay, I'm hungry too. It doesn't mean like if you're eating a candy bar, I'm just going to go walk up to you and be like, "Arr," and just eat your candy bar. Like, that's crazy. That's a thing a crazy person does. She just digs into some stranger's porridge. That's not okay. And then, this porridge is too hot, she exclaimed. So Goldilocks broke into a house, stole some stranger's porridge, and then complained about the temperature of it. Goldilocks is nuts. Okay, are you seeing this? Goldilocks is crazy. So she tasted the porridge from the second bowl, because sure, why not? This porridge is too cold, she said, which this could not be the case. The porridge can't be that hot and that cold if it was served at the same time out of the same pot, which we assume it is because there's no text evidence to say it came out of a different pot. The porridge is not that crazy. Goldilocks is making this up in her head. The porridge is probably one even temperature the whole time through. She just wants to ruin things, so she's making excuses to make herself feel okay about backwashing in other people's porridge. So she tasted the last bowl of porridge. Ah, this porridge is just right, she said happily, and she ate it all up. Great. So after she ruins 2 bowls of porridge, she just eats the third one. After she'd eaten the 3 bears' breakfast, granted she doesn't know they're bears, she decided she was feeling a little tired, which would probably mean go home, get some sleep before the people whose porridge you ate come home. But for her, no. So she walked into the living room, where she saw 3 chairs. Goldilocks sat in the first chair to rest her feet. "This chair is too big," she exclaimed, which no one has ever said about any chair ever. That's not a statement people make about chairs. A big chair is a wonderful thing. So she sat in the second chair. Do we see a pattern here? Goldilocks just likes to ruin stuff. Oh, here's some stuff from the Rising Action. This is Goldilocks. I worked really hard in this PowerPoint. Don't make fun of it. That's her in the kitchen. I drew all that myself. I made that table, and then I took a picture of it. And then I put it on this PowerPoint. And then I puked 4 straight lines, and I took a picture of them and put it on the PowerPoint. That's Goldilocks vomiting the porridge all over the bear's kitchen because she hates everyone. Then there's Goldilocks with 3 chairs. No one would complain about this chair. It looks amazing. That's her trying all the chairs. Okay. More Rising Action. I told you, Rising Action's the longest part of the story. "This chair is too big too," she whined. So she tried the last and smallest chair. "Ah, this chair is just right," she sighed. But just as she settled down in the chair to rest, it broke into pieces. Which doesn't have, like, chairs don't just like shatter, chairs don't just like disintegrate into nothing. You have to abuse the chair for it to break. She sat too hard in the chair. She's being reckless. We have a pattern of behavior here. But does Goldilocks care? No. Goldilocks was very tired by this time, which again, very much go home, Goldilocks. You're in big trouble if anybody comes home. So she went upstairs to the bedroom. She lay down in the first bed, but it was too hard. Maybe? She lay down in the second bed, but it was too soft. Then she lay down in the third bed, and it was just right. Pause. Goldilocks has just slept in 3 strangers' beds. She didn't wash the sheets. She didn't like smell it to be like, does this person fart a lot in bed? Like, what am I getting? That's disgusting, dude. What if like all of them like just like never shower? Well, they don't. They're bears. She doesn't know it. Bears don't shower. That bed probably smells like bear poop. Like seriously, like bears don't wipe their butts either. Like bears are disgusting. So those bears have been like just rubbing their filth all over these beds. Goldilocks, her biggest complaint, the bed is too hard. She didn't notice like all the bear hair and like bear feces all over the place. No. Goldilocks like, oh, this bed's slightly firmer than I enjoy. And then here's the part that makes Goldilocks the craziest, okay? When we do stuff we know is not right, it puts us on edge a little bit, right? Like if I go like break into a house and like try to sleep and like go like lay in someone's bed, which is so weird and creepy, I'm not gonna be able to fall asleep. Like I'm not okay with myself in that moment. Like I'm thinking in my head like this is not the right thing to do. I should get out of here. But Goldilocks doesn't have a conscience. Goldilocks has no part of her that can rationalize right from wrong. Like she has nothing of that going on in her brain. So in her mind, she's like, and just goes to sleep. Goldilocks is insane. She's not a good person. As she was sleeping, the three bears came home. So I remember when I read this when I was a kid, and whenever I read it, I'd be like, oh no, oh no, Goldilocks, wake up, there's bears. I'd be like shouting at the page, like, Mom, wake up, Goldilocks, there's bears, they're gonna come. Reading this to like the lens of like a grown-up, like as someone who can like think about how people behave, I'm like, the bears should eat Goldilocks. That'd be like one more terrible person we don't have to deal with. Like, Goldilocks is insane. Like, I don't know, like if you go into a house of bears and you mess up all their stuff and then go to sleep in the bear's house, like natural consequences say the bears get to eat you. Like, I don't know, like I don't want anything to do with it, but if a bear eats you, like that's what happens. Someone's been eating my porridge, growled the papa bear. Someone's been eating my porridge, said the mama bear. Someone's been eating my porridge and they ate it all up, cried the baby bear. There's a baby bear, a cute, fuzzy little baby bear, bawling their eyes out because Goldilocks didn't care. Just didn't care. Someone's been sitting in my chair, growled Papa Bear, which I want to know, like, if someone sat in your chair like a half hour ago, how do you know someone sat in your chair? Like, what did they do to that chair that made it so obvious they were sitting in your chair? Like, I know, like, there's that weird, creepy thing that happens, like, when you get up out of a chair that was just sat in and it's kind of warm, and you can feel, like, the other person's body heat, and it's gross, right? But, like, it's been a while. Goldilocks is, like, asleep. Like, Goldilocks' body heat is not still in that chair. What did Goldilocks do to the chair? Ugh. Someone's been sitting in my chair, said Mama Bear. Someone's been sitting in my chair, and they've broken it all to pieces. Again, cried the baby bear. Baby bear is crying right now. They decided to look around some more. When they got upstairs to the bedroom, Papa Bear growled, "Someone's been sleeping in my bed." Which, I mean, fair. It probably didn't smell like bear poop anymore. "Someone's been sleeping in my bed too," said Mama Bear. Oh, that's a bunch of angry bears. Angry bears. Like, okay. Here's the climax. The climax in the story is the part of the story where the main conflict gets resolved. And in this case, we probably classify it as character versus society, because Goldilocks is doing like exactly what society tells her she shouldn't do, and the bears kind of represent society in a way. It's kind of how I had to look at it. So we're going to figure out in this moment, if our main conflict is character versus society, who's going to win? Is Goldilocks going to win? Or are the bears going to win? Is society going to put her back in her place by having bears eat her? So the main conflict gets dealt with. I think of it also as a tipping point, because it's kind of like, who's going to win? Character versus what? Like, who's going to win? Well, only one can walk away a winner. And the second you have the answer to who wins, that's the climax. Here's the climax of the Goldilocks Three Bears. "Someone's been sleeping in my bed, and she's still there," exclaimed Baby Bear. Just then, Goldilocks woke up, convenient, and saw the three bears. She screamed, "Help!" And the answer for all of us as readers should be like, "You're on your own, Goldilocks." And she jumped up and ran out of the room. Goldilocks ran down to the stairs, opened the door, and she ran away into the forest. That's it. It's climax. Goldilocks won. Most stories we're used to getting a happy ending, and probably when we read this as little kids, probably if I read this to my daughter, in her mind she's like, this is a happy ending, I like this. which I'm not going to try to ruin it for her. She doesn't know like what a sociopath is at this point in her life, so I'll let her believe it. But for us, reading it as older readers, we should, I mean, in my mind, I'm like, this is a sad ending to the story. Like, this is like almost kind of like a story that's like representative of like how humans destroy like the natural environment and get away with it all the time. And that the bears or like the things in the environment are just left like, dude, I don't know. People just came in here and they just burned everything and ate all our food. What do we do? I don't know. They just ran away. They don't care. I mean, I think the story kind of serves like a representation of that idea, right? So this is, to me, it's a sad ending. But either way, this is the climax. Because this is the moment where we find out that Goldilocks wins. Character, in this case Goldilocks, wins. But for me, it's kind of a sad ending. Oh, this is Goldilocks running out of the house. Hooray! I built that house. I worked on it like all night last night. And then I took it back to like 1985 and I took a picture of it with my really crappy camera and a weird background from like a photo studio. And then I put it, whatever. Okay, falling action. Falling action comes at the end of the story and it's quick. No one cares. No one cares about the falling action. We have our answer. Goldilocks got away. What do we care? But they kind of got to wrap it up. So here's how they wrap it up. So we tie up loose ends. Pretty short part of the story. Here's how they wrap it up. And she never returned to the home of the three bears. So in this story, they kind of blended the falling action and what we call the resolution. It's the tidy ending to the story. So really, like, that story, there's just so few words in it that they just didn't have enough words to make a falling action and resolution because it's for little kids. But a resolution could maybe be something like this. I wrote one because there is no resolution to the story. So here's what I added. Over the course of many years, Goldilocks grew up to be the legendary bear hunter, hunting the brown bear to the point of extinction. Sad ending. Sorry. That's Goldilocks. She got some other jobs along the way, too. That's the bear. All right. I think we got it. Let's move on to the next step.